All right, welcome to Waynecast. I am Rob Johnson, and joining me is co-host Chris Williams. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Another Friday.
Yep. Friday.
Is that what they call it?
I think so.
Yeah. I told you we had Kevin's podcast was starting.
Yep.
And he said they want to call it It's Friday because like IT, because it's an IT company. And I was like, have you heard of Rebecca Black? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh, let me show you a couple videos, man.
Welcome
and he was
to the
like,
internet.
yeah, and he's like, well, we're not doing that.
I'm so glad they did the less Kevin, more tech, though.
Yeah.
It's
really,
such a good name.
Really good name. So, all right. So today, my game plan was to do kind of an origin of, not an origin, but like really just a recap of the last few months.
Yeah.
Like a State of the Union.
Yep. And I hijacked that. Yep. And veto it. And
yeah, second show.
Right.
And you're already taking over.
Yeah. So I want to know more about you.
Okay.
And how you started, how, where you got this crazy idea to employ all these people, and how your mindset is just in general about how you take, like me, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm learning every day, and I have, very little experience going into this. And how did you know to be like, yeah, he'll work. And then now, like with my, as poor as my confidence is, I can actually, I can build a couple websites, I know enough to be dangerous
Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Where did you get the idea for Wayne Media?
Yeah. So really what happened was the first company that I started was RTM. And and that was like a really side hobby. Like I was really into financial planning. My MBA at the time was in finance. So this was during my MBA. And when I went to New York, to do my, we had to write a thesis and like give a presentation on it and whatnot. So I went to New York to do that. I was talking with people that were in my cohort, and all of them were in organizational development. Okay. And all of them were talking about like the reasons that they were doing it. And I was like, I'm not an accountant person. Like, I don't want to be the person crunching numbers. Right. I want to be the person organizing the people that are crunching numbers and running the business. And like, I didn't want to be like a specialist on the finance side. I wanted to be the generalist that was calling the plays at the top.
Sure.
And I was like, I was going to switch my concentration. Mm-hmm. So the org dev teacher was on the trip, and she said, this is your last week to change. So if you want to change, just let me know and you can change it, because your concentrations are the next semester. So I changed it and did org dev. And it was really during that process where I was still doing RTM. I had a couple of clients, very small. And I was like, getting more into the consulting side of things. Right. And then when Wayne Consulting was born, that was really out of an idea of, people have watched like Shark Tank and, Restaurant Takeover and all these shows where like people go in and change things. But what's interesting about those shows, and what I think a lot of people don't know, is like take Kitchen Nightmares, for example. Mm-hmm. Over 80% of the kitchens that Gordon Ramsay's been to try and fix have closed in subsequent years. Yeah. Like it's not overly successful. Yep. And that's because the thing about that show is you can have a flash in a pan of motivation, but motivation is just a moment before you need more motivation. Right. And when that person's gone, you have nothing. Mm-hmm. So what you're not doing is you're not building an infrastructure there. So I thought, well, if we do consulting in a meaningful way, where we actually sit down with the business owners, we're on a consistent retainer, we can look at their marketing, their finance, their sales, and be really good advisors to them. That could be something that's scalable. Okay. The problem is when you do that, what I found, at least, and there's successful consulting companies out there, no doubt, but the thing that I found is that you have kind of this perfect client that you need to find, one that has already grown to where they have capital, but they have a need to grow more and they don't have anybody advising them. And that's a very small group of businesses, because you either are small and you can't afford the consultation, or you grow to where you can afford it and you have it now. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you kind of drop the financial side and just go all in on marketing?
Yeah. So during that thing, like I built the website for RTM, and that was just a lot of YouTube, how do you build websites? Right. What's the, just very much a YouTube class in it. And the RTM website, I think, looked pretty good. It's actually still live today if you want to go check it out. It's just rtmsolutions.com. I still get web submissions and whatnot.
That's awesome. Anybody?
Yeah. Anyone still want this? Well, what's cool is I still use it as like it's kind of like here's where we started kind of thing. So it's kind of worth the $200 a year just to point to it and be like, hey,
right.
Because there's still like a couple hundred blogs on there and just some helpful financial resources, which I've given to the team here.
Right.
And they're still relevant, at least to me. So it's kind of been worth it. But in the middle of that, I was creating all of the marketing materials, the social media, the roadmap, the advertising, learning about all that stuff. And the businesses I was working with was impressed by that. And I was like, well, it'd be kind of cool to maybe bundle that and, try and figure out how to sell it. Because the RTM side wasn't scalable without having a bunch of money.
Right.
Application was kind of the next thing I needed to do. And that was anywhere between 10 to 90,000, depending on how big or small you wanted to do it. And I really felt like it wasn't something that I could do well because it would have just been me.
Right.
I can't bring other people on. And the other problem is it's very hard to train somebody to be a very good advisor,
right? Even
be a very good business consultant, because you need to have the same philosophy.
Right.
Like, I think that's one of the reasons why there's no like co-manager of Wayne Media, because visions can just, be very different. Right. And when you have two people with different visions, like the company gets steered in different directions, and I just can't, that's not my personality.
Yep.
So it's just very hard to find that person that meshes with you and can advise and can go along and be kind of, your right hand. It's kind of a perfect storm that almost never happens.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You got to find that person that's on the same page
and doesn't want to overtake. And for me, like, this is going to sound a tad bit selfish, but like I don't want to be overpowered because this is my company.
Sure.
And I have like a very particular vision.
Right.
And the moment I don't have a vision is when I need help, or if the vision's going off the track, I need the guidance. But as long as I have an idea for what's next, I really want to do that. Mm-hmm. I think it's my responsibility to execute on that. Okay. And I don't want someone to stand in front of me and be like, no, you can't do this, because I started this so I could do it.
Right. Yeah. So taking that, where was Speakeasy? How was that born from this?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So when kind of 2011 is when I started listening to podcasts. I started working at Jackson in kind of like the temp pool. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of data entry and whatnot. And podcasting was kind of the first thing that I gravitated towards to help pass the time. And one thing I found consistent with a lot of the podcasts that I listened to, even big names, is that their audio was really bad. Mm. And I was like, man, like, you have such an interesting show, but I can't listen to it because the audio is straight up terrible.
Yep.
And that just kind of was always in my head. And then Serial came out, and Serial really just changed my opinion on podcasting. I was like, okay, this is where we're going.
Right.
Podcasting is going to be the biggest deliverer of media and knowledge to people. Mm-hmm. Forget social media.
Right.
Podcasting is going to be what it is, because social media is headlines.
Right.
It's really quick, kind of like fortune cookie information. Podcasting gives you the ability to go really deep.
Yep.
And while I was finishing up the MBA, I was like, man, it'd be really cool. And I have the journal page. I think it's in one of the blogs that I ripped out from like 2017.
Oh,
and
cool.
It was, I called it Wayne Media Group and then Wayne Podcasts.
Okay.
And it was funny because I came up with Wayne Media Group before Wayne Consulting Group.
Nice.
But I changed it to consulting because that's what I thought we were going to be doing more of. And then as we started to get more into media and videography and websites, it just became very clear that we're a media house, not a consulting house. Like, consulting is a part of it. Like, I want a very consultative relationship with all of our clients.
Yeah.
And we do a really good job at that, but it's not the main thing we do.
Okay.
So yeah, Speakeasy was just kind of like, what would it look like if we had a bunch of businesses in one network that were doing different podcasts that could trade off of each other and say, hey, we have, my initial vision was, okay, so we have a city and we have 30 podcasters, and all those podcasters are part of this really cool network. They can be guests on each other's shows. They can refer business to each other, because they're all joined by this same thing. And that thing is that they recognize the value of pushing the envelope when it comes to new forms of media.
Sure.
So they're all in the same mindset already. They recognize what's next, and they're all entrepreneurial in the sense that they want to do the next best thing for their business.
Right.
So it just kind of seemed to make sense to let's put together a studio.
Yeah.
And in my assessment, no one has done it like this. A lot of it's just studio rental by the hour. Mm-hmm. You can have an engineer present, but no one that I've seen has done, we're going to sit with you, we're going to do the consultation, we're going to do the post-production, we're going to do the distribution, and you just have to show up and record.
Right.
And if you need help on things to record, we'll sit down and talk about that as well. And I still haven't seen a company that doesn't and has brick and mortar studios that do it as well as we do. Mm-hmm. And even from the beginning. And that was the thing, is like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it right. Right. Everything needs to be perfect.
Yeah. How many people reach out to you and say, what are your hourly prices?
Yeah. I mean, a fair bit. And the answer is we have monthly rates. Yeah. And we have like one-off packages and whatnot where people can try out the studio and whatnot, but it's like the game plan is the network. Right. And that's why I try and hammer into everyone at the company is like, we are a network. We're not a rental studio. Like that's because I have, I forget the big one. There's like one studio rental company. It's kind of like a Airbnb for podcast studios. Oh, okay. You can get on their listing and they said, hey, we want you to be like the top listing of this thing. Right. And like their, whoever it was, their rep reached out to me several times and said, hey, can we get you on this listing? It'd be really valuable for us and you. Because then people would just be renting your studio through our system. Right. And I was like, no, that's not the point. Like you're missing the point, because when you do that, you turn it from a network into just a, volume-based business. And that's not what we are here. Right. That's not what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that was always kind of like a hidden bonus because, these businesses will come in and they'll, they want to talk about their, what they offer and, bring in their own guests and talk about their own things. But then they don't really realize that like the next podcaster is somebody that can come in and be a guest on their show or help them out professionally in some other aspect or, so I always thought that was pretty cool. And then they end up being friends and
when, kind of the biggest, I know you and I talked about this a lot, cause you said like, how cool is it when we put the sign up? Right. Yeah. Right. And and inside I didn't really feel much.
Yeah. Oh, I was getting there. Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions was like,
oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah. So I was going to go from there into the employees. Like where do you see, like, how do you pick, like, cause what'd you say? Our average age is like 24 here. Yeah. So we have some like younger people managing social businesses for these clients. Like, and some of these clients are on the older side that, they don't mess around with social media or computers and things that much. So like, how do you say like, yes, this person's got it? And like, how, like hiring me, you'd been like, yeah, he can do it. Like, cause I had no idea. You're like, hey, do you want to build websites? Yeah, it sounds fun, but I don't know the first thing about it. And you're like, oh, it'll be fine. And then here we are.
Cause I think when people might look at it, cause you and I are related, right? We're cousins. Right. So people might be like, well, he did it out of obligation. Right. Yeah. Right. And if you know anything about our family, that is not the case.
Absolutely.
There's no obligation at all to anything there. Yep. So, and we weren't even remotely close until Aaron's wedding. Right. So the biggest thing is character. I look at integrity when it comes to people. Mm-hmm. If I know that somebody is going to be invested in an idea, I don't give a shit what they know. Right. Because I know that they're going to have the willingness to learn it. Okay. Right. Like when I sit down and think about positions, like there's kind of two prongs I look at. What knowledge do they need to start to help me? And then what is their integrity level? Or what do I perceive to be their integrity level? And there's some positions, like if I hire an ad manager, right? I can't really train an ad manager from the ground up. That would take a couple of years. Right. So that position, I would need somebody that has good integrity and has a basic working knowledge of how Google Ads or Facebook Ads works. Sure. But when it comes to like a new company process, like I say this all the time, like I'm not interested in copying anybody's marketing playbook or anybody's business. Right. Everything we do is basically from my head. Like I want to do things very differently than any other companies. So I don't really care about what this company is doing on their websites or how they're doing it. It means very little to me. It's good as a benchmark. But it has nothing to do with like how we should be driving our company. So when it came to you and I worked together at Jackson, and from the beginning, what I liked about working with you is that you were always willing to put in the work to learn the process, even if you knew nothing about it. Right. And it bothered you when you didn't know enough about it. Yeah. And that little flair of being bothered by something enough to go and research it on your own and put in the extra hours, like that's a done deal. Yeah. Because I hate when someone comes to me and says, hey, I have this problem, and they've done no research to look into it. Like that is a huge pet peeve of mine. Cause like you have literally Google sitting in front of you. Right. What I prefer in people is I have a problem. I've researched it. Here's a couple options I think about. Right. This is what I think would be good. What do you think? Right. Now we can have a conversation. And that's how you've always been.
Okay. Yeah. That question wasn't really like, like I wasn't aiming for a compliment, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was just more curious about like, if I were in your shoes, like I would have no idea where to find good people.
Yeah.
And it's like from, you know, what I was probably like the first or second employee beside, you know, behind like me and Amanda.
Yeah. You were the first, you and Amanda were like the first kind of core employees. Like something I forgot about the other day, cause I was thinking about 2019, cause I've been doing this big financial review.
Right.
And, that's been a fun task in and of itself. But as I was looking at that, I looked at all of our first employees, and we actually had 5 part-time employees in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Which I forgot about.
Yeah.
Mainly because they didn't really have any vested interest in the company. It was just kind of a trial and error thing.
Right.
And one of them was a good friend of mine from high school who, you know, wanted to start doing some stuff and do some part-time work and whatnot. And then that just didn't work out. But yeah, you and Amanda were really the first 2 like full-time serious employees that I thought would drive a lot of change.
Okay. Yeah, because when it comes to new people, like you were just talking to him the other day about we might be looking for another web developer.
Yeah.
And I get nervous. I'm like, oh crap, this dude's gonna know way more than me.
Yeah.
And he's just gonna like come in with like, you know, just
it's like, here, check out my JavaScript.
Step aside. Yeah. But like it hasn't really happened yet, because I think that, you know, that spark or whatever is, at least in my opinion, I've had on numerous jobs before this place, and that spark is rare. Like, you know, my wife manages you know, her Johnny Almond, and has 30 some employees. And she always talks about trying to find, you know, those characteristics in people, and it's really hard. So
a lot of it's patience. Like I've learned in the beginning that like there's no need to rush an interview process.
Yeah.
Now there's been people that we've hired that I'm like, damn, I wish I could hire on interview 1 because I'm so excited about them, because I know they're going to sail through.
Sure.
Like I'll bet my left arm.
Yeah.
Not my right one, because I'm right-handed, but I'll gamble the left one.
Right.
And you know, there's people that have been like, all right, it's a home run.
Right.
And then there's been people that I've hired that I've been very uncertain about. And that was a good education for me, because that uncertainty proved to be true. So anytime I have any doubt about anybody, I just don't hire them.
Right.
Because it's more of a safeguard for me, because I want to be able to trust the people that are on the team. And those first 3 interviews are critical in that.
Sure. Okay.
So usually the first interview, I've talked about this several times on the show, but the first interview is, you know, typically background, you know, information, job skills. The second one is all behavioral. It has nothing to do with the job at all.
Right.
It's all behavioral assessment. And then the third one is a repeat of the first interview, so I can see if anyone's lying.
Okay. I like that.
And it's just really, it's hard to remember a lie.
Right.
And it's even harder when I ask the questions in reverse order.
Sure.
So it's just it's a really neat tactic that I like, and it's proved really well. We have an amazing team.
Right.
And that's what excites me the most about what we do here, is just the people that are enthusiastic about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things, is that we're all just friends hanging out, chilling.
Yeah.
We can all bounce ideas off of each other, and we're not afraid to be like, no, that doesn't look great.
Yeah.
You should try again.
And it's not competitive.
Yeah.
Which I love,
Yep.
because I was always like anti-flat companies where it's like, there's no hierarchy. Like there needs to be hierarchy. There needs to be someone calling the shots, and there needs to be someone responsible for this department or that department. But overall, like no one should ever feel like, you know, my job's at risk because I had to ask somebody, you know, below me for something. It's like, don't ever feel that way. Like this is a collaboration.
Right.
You know, the amount of times I go to Amanda or Tori or Madison and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, I'm the owner. Like I want to instill that in them. Like that's an okay thing to do. Like I don't know everything. You know, there's things that we do in this company that I can't do now because everyone's skills have exceeded mine, which is good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. But that you're doing all the things that we have no idea. Like, so you might have started off doing everything and moved away, but now like some of the things like you work constantly.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to go next, is like, where do you get that drive to just get up every single day and, all right, I'm going to go do this. Stay up until 2 a.m, get up at 8 a.m, or 7 and 6 a.m, and just keep hammering it out every single day with no, like I've worked with you even in Jackson. So 5-6 years now, maybe.
Yeah.
And you've maybe taken one long weekend.
Yeah.
That's not a holiday. So like what gets you out of bed every day?
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, well, there's two things. And the second thing is something that keeps growing. So my drive keeps growing on that. The first thing is, Beth and the kids, right? Like that is a huge motivation for me because one, I want to set a really good example for them, especially Eli, because he, and Emmy as well, but just like for him to be like, hey, this is what a good model of, a father should be, a husband should be, and I really want to set a good example for him because I want him to, take everything that I did and do better than me.
Right.
And take all the terrible things that I did and be like, okay, that's a good reminder not to do those things. That's what you should want as a parent. Like I want him to be a much better father than me, a much better husband than me. Like that should be what we want for our kids.
Right.
So that's a big driving factor. The second thing is all the employees. So like my biggest goal in the company is to never miss payroll.
Sure.
Like that might sound like a standard goal, but like the day I can't make payroll is the day I close the doors.
Okay.
Like because you guys are all trusting in me that I'm going to do my job and hold up my end of the agreement and you do the work.
Right.
So to me, that is a very personal contract that we have together.
Yeah.
So like when, like we had a period on Q1 of this year where, we were opening this place and things were just super stressful. Everything was flying all over the place. Cash was flying all over the place. And I literally was just like, all right, I'm hammering 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. I take 5 hours or so when I get home, hang with the kids and Beth. And then after that's gone, I'm back at it. Because I have a responsibility to them and you guys to perform and do well. And if I don't do that, then I'm not doing my job.
Right.
And that's really important to me. So those two things alone are what drives me.
Yeah. That's incredible. I think there's very few people that could do that. Like, and I'm baffled, lost for words of how you can do it every day, every single day. Cause it's like, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. Well, there's breaks. I mean, there's breaks and there's, also too, you have this kind of cooling off period and what kind of in September was a really interesting month. And it's interesting we're having this conversation now because in September I did nothing in sales.
Sure.
Like I brought in no new business, but what I did do was we sat down and reorganized our entire creative department, processes, procedures, and really built, I think, a really solid foundation for how our workflow is. And it was good before, but it's excellent now.
Right.
And I know that it's really good because after we rolled it out within a week, I had at least 4 of our clients that I can think of off the top of my head that just sent me a direct email saying, this is way better than what it was before. Thank you.
Nice.
That's cool. It was like, okay, so that was just confirmation that, we made the right call.
Yeah.
And so there are months where you have just kind of a recalibration and it's not as hard. But then like October 1st, I was like, all right, game on, son.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah. And that's when I was like, new website. And I'm like, okay.
We can slow down a little.
Here we go.
Yeah. But it's just it's very much a give and take thing. And there's no endless motor. Like I got into a really good debate with a friend of mine in Louisville. One of our old clients, we were talking about this and it was very friendly. I think you might've been there actually. We were talking about willpower. Remember we were sitting because it was with, we were sitting with Misha and Eugene.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We were at their house and talking about willpower and just kind of kicking around ideas. Like debate's not even the right word.
Right.
But like, I'm a big believer that you do have a finite supply of willpower and that needs to be replenished at a daily or every other day level, depending on how much you're staying up.
Right.
And those are things that you need to recharge and, recalibrate. And, like right now, after the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to feel that, that it's time to unplug for a little bit and,
absolutely.
and come back at it in a couple of days.
Right. Yeah.
So
This is my last day for a whole week.
Yeah. And that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not going to let you get away from personal stuff.
Okay.
And keep pushing back towards business stuff.
Okay.
So you said in those 5 hours when you're hanging out with Beth and the kids, what are you doing? You watching TV? I know you played Mario Kart and play some games with Emmy.
Yeah. So generally we family dinner is super important. So that was something that, Beth and I from the beginning were like, we're going to, as much as we can, as, we're all going to sit down, no distractions, no phones, and just have dinner. Cause I'll turn my phone upside down, turn on do not disturb. And then it's,
Nice.
And then that's my hope. Now there's times when things are pressing or we have something going live that I need to be aware of. But that's the game plan. Then after that, it's basically just like, games, hanging out when it's nice outside. We live in a pretty rural area.
Right.
So it's putting it mildly. Yeah. So that's a big part of it. And that's, I didn't want to be the person that was like, hey, my dad just worked all the time.
Right.
I think that's the perception I give to a lot of people is that I'm always hammering and like my kids never see me.
Right.
And, like, that's kind of a recurring joke that I don't really like, but people seem to make quite a bit. And, that was really important to me because I want them to know, like, this is what it takes to be successful. But at the same time, that success needs to be measured against things that actually matter, like family.
Right.
Because, like, we could be killing it and, we just crossed 1 million as a company, which was a big goal for us. But, like, I can get a call right now that something terrible happened and none of that shit matters at all to me. Like, that's what matters. And that's, like, the one thing I want entrepreneurs to think about. And really even the team that we have here. Yeah. Like, I get really upset when people are like, oh, I got to get this done, or I got to work on this, or I got to stay till 8 o'clock. And it's like, dude, just go home. Like,
I start seeing internal emails flying around at 10:30 at night.
Yeah. It's like, don't do that. Like, it's not worth it because you're not like I get it and I appreciate it. Like, I appreciate the willingness and the commitment and everyone being vested, and that means a lot to me. Yeah. But I never want someone to be like, my job is my life, because it's not. Yeah. Like, this is not the most important thing you're going to do. This, like, Wayne Media is not the most important thing I'm going to do.
Right. Yeah. It took me a long time to realize that like, you can work your butt off and have all the money in your bank account, but if you don't have the time to spend it, or you don't have the people to spend it with, then it's not really worth it. So. Yeah,
yachts are lonely if it's by yourself, my friend. Right. So you ever see someone smiling on a yacht by themselves?
Right. Gross.
So it's something where you really need to put into perspective. And there's days where I'm like, hey, it's gonna be a rough week. I'm stacked up. Right. It's gonna be busy. I'm gonna be home late, but I try to communicate that ahead of time. Right. Because if you don't communicate those things, it can just be bad news for the home life. And that's that communication is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going back to, I was going to mention it before, but those internal emails flying around at 10:30, I think a lot of these, like, for me, I think we understand because we've talked enough about how you feel about, those kind of things. But I know a lot of the newer employees are trying to bust their butt because they see it in you. Yeah. So they're like, okay, this dude is breaking his back off working constantly, so I need to do it too. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's just the difference. Like, I have more invested than anyone else does. Like, I don't expect anyone to match my output level because no one has the stakes that I do in the game. Right. And no one ever will. So, like, I never expect, like, you'll never hear me say, I want you to work as hard as I do, because that'd be a ridiculous thing for me to ask somebody, because you don't have as much invested as I do, or you're not, it's not the right thing to ask somebody. Right. Like, I want you to work as hard as you think you ought to work. And if we have a disagreement on what that looks like, then we'll talk about it. But, like, generally I trust people to be very self-motivated. And that was one thing that was really eye-opening. When we first moved in here, I interviewed somebody from another agency that was looking to move over. And she said, what would my job be like? And I gave her a brief rundown and said, once you get spun up and you're comfortable, you'll be reaching out to clients, talking to them, making sure they're comfortable, asking if they have any needs, any troubles. And she's like, so I'll be talking to the clients. And I was like, yeah. Totally. I said, and she's like, we don't do that at our agency. And I was like, well, how many employees do you have? And she's like, 20. And I was like, hold on, who talks to all the clients? And she's like, the owner. Oh. And I was like, oh, yeah, that dude has no life. Yeah. Or the clients, they're just turning over so quickly, because the first thing that I put in place was like, all right, decentralized command. Who's going to be running this and that? Right. And when you do that, I'm taking things off my plate so I can go do other things. And I'm empowering them to make decisions and take risks. And I invite failure. Like, I don't mind if someone makes mistakes if it's in the effort of, honestly trying something new. Sure. I don't want people going out there and botching things just for the hell of it. But, like, if someone's making a mistake and they're learning from it, like, that's a very good thing. Right. And you mentioned earlier, how young our team is. I don't expect them to know everything. A lot of people that work here have not been seasoned business professionals for 10 years. And that's a good thing, because all of that corporateness hasn't been kind of beaten into them. Right. And it's just, that's why I just enjoy the culture that we have here, because it's not buttoned down. It's not, it's just very relaxed, and the clients feel that when they walk in. Yep. But yeah, I don't want people to be in a spot where they're they feel like they can't talk to clients or they have to go through me for everything.
Sure.
And like, I want people to take those risks and
Yep.
and have those conversations because it makes you a better communicator.
Right.
Like if you can pick up the phone and be like, hey, Margaret, we have this issue with your ad. Here's our options. What do you think?
Sure. Right.
That's much better than you coming to me, telling me the problem, me calling Margaret, and then I don't really know
Right.
where
Playing
we're
telephone.
at. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's less efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And I love when clients call or the team and not me, and not just because I don't have to take the call, but just because that means it's working.
Right.
It just means, the communication's working.
Yep. And you know that those employees are good to handle that situation.
Right.
So it's always nice. And the client feels comfortable enough to go to them instead of you.
Right. And that's what we want is because we have, 50 something clients on management. I can't possibly talk to them all.
Right.
If I spent 30 minutes a day,
Right.
that's roughly, 30 hours a month. I'd be just talking to clients,
Right.
and that's not beneficial for anybody. So when people are like, hey, you handed me off to this person, like I'm in that meeting, I'm talking to them and they have my number if there's an issue. Right. That's what I want. I don't want to just hand them off and you never talk to me again. But there needs to be some type of decentralized command so we can actually grow and scale well, and it's not just all on me.
Yep. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all of my big
Your big
boss questions for the Chris Takeover episode.
Yeah.
How do you want to do this?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was going to say one more thing. I forgot what it was. Oh, we talked about the sign. I want to talk about that. Yeah. If you want to intro that, you can. But
so basically what it was that I know, like, we've been working together. We have this history, and that we were putting together the studio and they were putting up the sign. And to me, like, I'm just the web designer, like, it's like, but when they put up the sign, I'm like, hell yeah, that's my building. Like, it's not my building, but I work there. But it's still, I had pride seeing that sign go up. Like, that's my spot when people drive down the road, you know, or like if I do have extended family or, people that I know, they're like, oh crap, I drove by your place the other day. I'm like, hell yeah, you did. Yeah. So when I ask you about it, you're just like, so like what, or like when we were having a couple Fridays ago, we had like all the employees we're all doing like a pizza party, and I sit back and it's like this, all of your work culminates to this. Everybody's sitting around like a family eating pizza, hanging out, chilling. Yeah. Like even your kids are running around. Like it was like, it's the best. That felt like a Christmas morning to me. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody's there, just like big smiles on their face, and it's all great. So like, you did that. Yeah. All of your work, that sign on the building is there because of all the late nights, early mornings, all of that. Yeah. And it means a lot. Like what's like my favorite thing is to see the people grow. Like my hands down favorite thing about my job is to see where someone started a year ago and see where they've progressed. Right. So like you and Amanda are kind of the chief examples of that because you guys have been here the longest. Right. So I can see your trajectory over time and how much better it's gotten. When we first started, you couldn't build a website. Right. You could, but not without like guidance and just sitting down in collaboration. And now there's websites that go out that I don't even see. Well, I see them, but I don't do anything on them. Yeah. And that's a huge thing. Yeah. Like that's such a big accomplishment. And that is really rewarding for me because that's a structure that we've sat down and partnered on and figured out and worked really well. Right. And the same thing with Amanda, to see her lead the creative team and answer ideas and create really graphically interesting content that people love. Like it's just showing that the process works. Right. But when I first got like emotional about this whole thing, it wasn't the sign. I was sitting in my office back when I didn't have the insulation in it, so I could hear literally everything that was going on in the building. And there was two podcasters that had crossed paths in the green room. And one of them said to the other, hey, I just listened to your show. I really liked it. What if we did a crossover where we start one on yours and finish on mine? Now, mind you, I never told them to do this. Right. But that was the idea of Speakeasy Podcast Network, for people to do that. Yeah. And I heard it and I was like, it worked. Yeah. Like I was right. Like it was just kind of a very self-affirming thing. Like it felt really nice to hear that, and it was not prompted. Right. So I was like, okay, people get the concept. And that was when I was sold. I was like, all right, we're like, there's no stopping. Right. So that was the moment where I was like, all right, we have something. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, let's wrap this boy up.
All right. Yeah, we got some websites to build.
Yeah,
no, we don't actually. I got some more meetings to go to.
I got some vacation to go on.
Yeah,
I don't know
Disney.
about you guys.
Yeah, yeah, not me.
But,
so yeah, man. So I don't know what number this falls on in the chart. My suspicion is this is going to be 56. But
Chris 2.
Yeah, Chris 2 is what we're calling it. So, all right, you want to close the show?
Yeah. So thanks for joining, and catch you next week.
Let's try that again.
Yeah, I don't know. What else? What else do we?
No, I'm just kidding. It's all good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, see you next week. Later.